Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 5:30 in the morning here, Tuesday morning, November the 29th. I'm glad to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. On for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. Chat room's open. I did pop the link in there what I want to look at this week, and I appreciate everybody tuning in. I missed a few shows there this weekend and yesterday, and just sort of taking a break in as well, doing some studies and different things like that, catching up on some of my stuff. So, yeah, I'm glad to be back. I like to do these shows, and hopefully they're helping somebody. Like the reason I started doing these shows in the first place was because I knew that, myself growing up the way that I did and surviving, so much horror and really just a horrible childhood, and then making these horrible decisions for myself as an adult. There's other people out there in the same position, and that there's so many people who have had to come through so much and are still suffering. I know so many people who are, and I won't name names, but it's really a hard situation for people who have been abused, and to try to make sense and to try to deal and cope with what's going on inside of us and what's going on around us, and trying to make sense of things and trying to just survive, right? And it's a hard place to be. And I thought, I'll just be one more voice out here talking about these issues and, speaking about my own particular situation so that people will know that, hey, they're not alone, and that there is good stuff out there. There's help out there, to make sure you reach out and get some help, whatever help that you decide to get. You know what I mean? We're all different. We all need different things. But that's why I started doing these shows in the first place a couple of years ago. And also, to talk about the issues of child abuse and child abuse prevention. So that was really important to me. And I started doing this show in the morning because I realized that I needed to work on my own healing journey too. And I thought, well, I'll just do it in small, manageable pieces in the morning, because that's the way I felt would be the best situation for me. And so, we're all different. We all need different things. Some people need counseling. Some people might want a therapist. Some people might need a therapist or a psychotherapist, and some people might prefer group support. Like whatever works for you is the way you should go. You know what I mean? I did a lot of online group support stuff in the very beginning of my healing journey, which was great. I really needed it. I needed some validation. I needed to talk to survivors who had been through what I had been through and experienced some of the same things I had, so that I could speak with people who understood where I was coming from. And because it's hard to find people in society who are honest enough to even talk with us about certain things, and also it's a hurtful topic. So many people don't want to talk about child abuse and what's happened to us, and so I found the online group support was really awesome. It helped me out a lot, and just reaching out to people, that made a huge difference, And another issue is being proactive on my healing journey. I mean, I didn't just sit back and just. The reason why I decided to do all this work on my healing journey is because I was tired of being in the same old place. I was tired of being in that same old frame of mind where I was just miserable. I was unhappy, and I could be happy during the day, go to work and everything's fine, and then come home at the end of the day and I'd just be sitting around in the same old misery, really, the same old mess that I was always in. And I thought, well, I got to change this because I'm tired of this. You know what I mean? But it took me a long time to do it. I've been on my healing journey. April will be 5 years, so it's not like it happened overnight or anything. And the bulk of my healing journey has been done probably in the last year and a half, I'd say. So really just the real heavy-duty stuff that I've done, really mostly in the last year and a half. So it's been a long road. It hasn't happened overnight. But, you have to listen to my shows at your own discretion. I'm talking about abuse. I'm talking about very sensitive stuff. And if you're, not sure if you're okay listening to the topics of abuse, you have to use your own discretion, listen at your own discretion, And young people under the age of 18, I just ask you have permission to listen to my shows. Just have an adult listen to the show with you so that they can make sure it's okay for you to listen to. Because I'm just all about protecting young people. And so anyone under the age of 18, my shows are not for younger children. They're not for young children at all. There's a lot of adult content on my shows. So if you're 18 and under, have adults who's older who can listen to the shows or a show or two with you and see if it's something that's age appropriate for you, right? So we'll get right into this. I wanted to look at self-esteem, and I found this one website that has a couple of good tips on it, 21 tips to be exact. And I just wanted to kind of look through some of those. But also, I've been thinking about a lot about self-esteem, because self-esteem is an issue that, like, I understand the whole idea of positive self-esteem, like it's something that I totally get. Because in order for me to get where I am today, I've had to actually master that stuff. Because, coming out of this abusive home that I grew up in, and this negative stuff my whole life, really, and my own negative self-talk and negative stuff, in order for me just to get up and go in the morning, go to work and deal with what I have to deal with during the day, I had to actually buy into the self-esteem stuff, you know what I mean? And so I've actually done a lot of looking at self-esteem stuff over the last 20 years, you know what I mean? It hasn't been the last couple of years. I've been working on my own self-esteem for many, many years, and that's just so that I could cope and function and be able to show up to work the next day, you know what I mean? Because I know growing up abused, right? I mean, I was, everybody who's been listening to my shows for the last 2 years knows where I came from. And so it's been a hard road. And so in order for me just to be able to do what I do, I certainly had to come a long way in my self-esteem. I still have issues with certain things, you know what I mean? Like sometimes I have fleeting moments, of situations where I'll be going along fine and everything's great, and then all of a sudden I'll hit some rejection somewhere, and I don't handle rejection well. So rejection kind of throws me back down into sort of that state of, oh, I'll never amount to anything, or I'm not good enough, or these statements that people will sometimes tell themselves, that I don't count, or I'm just stupid, or whatever it is. For my own self, that would be what it is. Or I'm just not smart enough, or I don't really belong. Belonging is a huge issue for me, because I didn't belong in my family. I didn't belong to my parents. I didn't belong anywhere. My parents hated me. Well, they hated all their children, but they hated me too. And they didn't make us feel like we belonged. They told us that we didn't belong, and that we should have just died, and that they should have killed us, and that they hated us, and all this horrible stuff. So I didn't grow up with any kind of ability to feel welcomed, or that I belong anywhere, right? So I have a hard time, even today, in relationships, whether it's working relationships or any type of relationship. I just have a feeling that I really don't belong, and I still have that feeling. It's something it's been there for so long, since day one, like since I was born. It's hard to shake a feeling like that, you know what I mean? But sometimes, I'll get in with a group of people working somewhere or doing something, and all of a sudden I start to feel, oh, yeah, no, I do belong here. And then I'll hit some rejection, and then I'm like, back down into that, oh, I guess I just really don't belong. And it's hard. It's very, very hard, because it's kind of like these are the issues that we have to work through. This is the stuff that makes surviving child abuse or surviving abuse of any kind really tough. Because we have to be smart enough to be able to pick ourselves up and say, okay, I need to talk to my counselor, I need to talk to my therapist, or, for instance, for myself, because I'm doing this self-help, I have to be able to say, oh, okay, I'm going to get back into reading this stuff on self-esteem, reading this stuff on, confidence-building stuff. I'm going to believe that, you know what I mean? Because that's the truth. See, I know the truth, and the truth is that we all count, we all matter, and not one of us deserved to be treated the way that we did. And so I'm really actually fortunate, because I can see the other side. I don't just sit around in darkness and thinking, oh, I just really, truly don't belong here. Part of me wants to believe that, because that's how I grew up. But the other part of me knows that that's not true, that I do belong, and I have every opportunity, like everybody else, to make my life a good life, and to make the proper choices and good choices for myself. Or I can just let myself go and, on the direction that I was going before, which is a path of self-destruction, and just depression, and just being, down about the whole thing. And that's not living, that's not living at all. And that's, what I do now is, when I recognize that I'm starting to feel like, oh, I just starting to feel down about things, or maybe I've had some rejection somewhere, because I always have rejection, because I don't ever keep a job. I actually choose to work temporary work, and I had to think very carefully why I do that. And it's because I can't handle rejection. I want to be the one that leads first, see? I can't handle somebody pushing me out. Like, I'm so tired of being pushed out. I was pushed out as a child. I was pushed out of my mother's life. I was pushed out of my dad's life. I was pushed out of the house. I was pushed out of that family, right? And I wasn't the only one. I mean, none of my siblings were actually cared for or loved, but I was the last child, and I was very sensitive. And I still am, you know what I mean? I'm a sensitive person, so I take everything pretty hard. And you'd think after growing up the way that I did that I would have developed some sort of a tough, like thick skin, you know, ability to handle things, but actually it's the opposite. I'm actually more sensitive than most people would probably be. And it's hard. It's a hard position to be in. But what it does is it allows me to feel love too. It allows me to feel all the good stuff because I didn't develop that hardness and that coarseness that said, you know, okay, because I did as a teenager. I actually took that role on, where, you know, okay, I can't feel anything. You know, so then I couldn't feel love. I couldn't feel goodness. I couldn't feel any of the good stuff. So what I decided to do is not do that. Made a clear decision not to do that. And so in allowing myself to feel love and goodness and all this other stuff, it opened me to feel rejection and pain. You know, and that's a hard place to be because I am ultra sensitive. So, you know, for jobs and stuff, like, I mean, I was just like, well, I'll just work temporary jobs, and, you know, this way there's no way they could fire me because I'll be the one that leaves first. You know what I mean? And if I don't like the job, I can just leave. It's all these self-protective measures. I'm still doing it as an adult, right? I'm still that young person trying to protect myself from being hurt, right? But we got to realize that in every situation there is going to be rejection, and that's where I'm trying to grow up. I'm trying to actually allow myself to learn this stuff. You know what I mean? And say, okay, there is going to be rejection in everywhere. People are getting fired left and right. People are losing their jobs left and right. People are being replaced. People are, you know, these are adults, working adults who thought that they had a job for life or at least for the next 20 years, and that's not the way it is anymore. And so, you know, whether I work permanent or temporary doesn't really matter. At some point, I'm going to have to handle rejection, and it's not going to be stemming from my childhood. See, so what I have to learn how to do is separate that stuff. Realize that no, this is based on adult stuff. These are not my parents rejected me. This is not, you know, my childhood stuff. It's not the same thing at all. So I need to, you know, to be able to kind of to look at it a little bit differently, you know what I mean, and handle that rejection a little differently, because this is not the same kind of rejection at all. But my inner children think that it is. You know, it's like, oh no, we're being rejected, you know, and it's like, no, but it's not the same thing, you know. This is life. This is the way life is. It's just going to be that way. Things aren't going to necessarily work the way that we want them to, and things aren't going to go the way that we want them to. That's very childlike attitude to think that that's the way it's going to be. It's not going to be that way. You know what I mean? And we are going to have to be able to skirt, you know, to dance around some of these issues, and you know, find out what's making us tick. You know what I mean? And what's causing us distress, and then work through that stuff. You know, and for me, because I tend to work, you know, temporary stuff, right, temporary contract jobs, just so I don't have to, like, you know, form any attachments to the job, which I'm sure that's what that's all about. I have to learn how to, you know, that I can do this job, and, you know, for whatever length it lasts, you know, I get more experience for the more I do. You know, the different situations I work in gives me more experience. We have to be able to look at the positives. So there's a lot of positives in what I do, because I tend to work contract, temporary work. I'm always learning something new, whereas a lot of people will just do the same job for 20 years, and they never really learn anything else. I learn new stuff every 6 months, and so I'm always updating my skills and always updating my knowledge base, right? So my knowledge base gets updated all the time because I'm learning new stuff all the time. So there's positives in this stuff, so we have to be able to kind of look at the positives and not just look at the negatives, you know what I mean? And sort of balance it out. I think it's just a balancing act, you know. But I was looking through John Bradshaw's book, and this is Healing the Shame That Binds You. And it's a great book. It talks all about toxic shame and whatnot. And John Bradshaw was talking, just because I was thinking about self-esteem, and I thought, yeah, where does that stuff like low self-esteem come from? And so many times people who have been abused, you know, it comes from the people who abused us. They may have told this stuff, like my parents, my mother especially, would tell me stuff like a rotten kid, I was a whore, I was an evil child, I was bad, you know, just these type of things, right? I was not wanted, right? And of course that really had a huge effect on my self-esteem, you know, of who I was to myself and to the world from a very young age, like 0 to whatever, right? And so, you know, over the years I had to learn that, no, that's not true at all. What she said was a bunch of garbage. She was just taking her anger out on me, and it really wasn't true. So none of that stuff was true. So the young little child within me doesn't understand that my mother was just mentally ill, very sick, psychologically ill. She was abused herself her whole life. She was abused as a child, and she was abused in her adult life with his marriage with my dad, right? So she was not well, right? But my inner child, my little, 7-year-old, 6-year-old, doesn't understand that. You know what I mean? That little person inside me still has a hard time getting her head wrapped around that was all coming from my mother's illness. It wasn't true. Like, none of that stuff was true. The adult me knows that, and knows that was often just garbage from my mother, and she was just trying to hurt me, which she really did. And so me as the adult, I can sit back and say, I don't have to listen to any of that, and I didn't have to take that as a child, and, it's unfortunate that I had to suffer through that, but as an adult, I don't have to believe that. So I don't have to buy into any of that garbage, right? But John Bradshaw talks a whole lot about that whole, the shame, the toxic shame, through this book, because it's Healing the Shame That Binds You. This is a great book, really, all kinds of information here about toxic shame. And he goes on to talk about, at the different points, like of being wounded, right? From toddlerhood to, all the way through, right? From being a child, like a zero infant, all the way through. And he talks about, and this is kind of where I believe, like self-esteem and self-worth and who we are, because our ego and stuff, our parts of ourself, our ego and whatnot, is all formed in very early stages. Maybe, I don't know about this stuff. I just know that it's formed really early. So 0 to 6 months infancy, a faulty or traumatic attachment, failure to form the interpersonal bridge, being shamed binds, just being alive. Right, so a child who's not getting their needs met, a little infant, little toddler, they're not getting their needs met, or they're being abused in some way, you're gonna start to carry this stuff, you know what I mean? Shame is apathy, 6 to 18 months, child is fearful, severe limits to curiosity, so that's interest or curiosity shame binds. And this is shame binds, binding shame, right? 18 months to 3.5 years, overexposed, severe limits to autonomy, punishment, spankings, breaking the child's will, no boundaries. Purpose shame binds, pleasure shame binds, and anger shame binds. These are all carried in interpersonal transfer-induced shame, right? And he goes all the way up, and he talks about the whole thing. This is developmental stages of toxic shame, all the way through to the older adult, and all of this stuff is so extremely damaging to a person's sense of self and a person's life. You know what I mean? Like, it's horrible, you know what I mean? And when you look through and you actually see what happens to people, I know that all, to me, and I know what it did to me, all because I can remember being a teenager and some of the, the very self-destructive and destructive lifestyle that I chose was all based on that whole, rebellious nature, and that was just from being so mistreated as a child. They'll either, a child will either go sit in the corner and conform, or they will rebel. And they will act out, and many times it's self-destructive. And so, I wasn't that little child sitting in the corner really crouching. I was sometimes, but most of the time I was rebelling. And, it's then as an adult we have to try to make sense of that. It's like, okay, well, who am I? Am I that abused child? As an adult, like, who am I? Like, am I the one who needs to fight all the time? Am I the one who needs to run all the time? Am I the one, am I this child that needs to be angry all the time? You know what I mean? Because it's like, who am I? I mean, I can sit there and I can think, well, I'm made up of a whole lot of parts, And part of me sees the good stuff in life, and the other part of me sees the other stuff, And so, this whole self-esteem is important not to let that go. You know what I mean? And to actually work through some of it, because we certainly, if you're coming from an abusive environment, we have to do this work. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Somebody's not going to just pass a magic wand over us and say, there we go, all done, all healed, there you go. That's great. $295, you know what I mean? It's a lot of work to go through and change our belief systems, because really that's what it all really mostly is, I think, from what I've read and what I've seen out there, is just changing the way we feel about ourselves and changing the attitudes that we have towards life and ourselves. And it can't, I don't think, it's not like I could wake up one day, let's talk about my own situation. I can't wake up in the morning and say, oh, there we go, I'm changing my whole the whole thing. Because to me, that's just creating a false world. You know what I mean? It's creating something that's false. Like, the abuse happened. I can't change that. Truth is truth, What it did to me happened, you know what I mean? The cause and effect, right? So it's not like I can deny all that stuff. What I want to do is do it in a healthy way, and that is to work through the stuff. That's why for 2 years, especially on air, but just to try to be helpful to other people. But I need to learn how to change some of that negative stuff and start to really believe and work on that stuff like self-esteem and self-confidence, self-worth and whatnot. And so in order to do that, I study it out because I'm like, okay, I need to know. Like, I know that this stuff is true, that we all deserve to be here. No one deserves to be abused ever. It's a shame that people do these horrible things to people, especially children. But it happens, and so then what? We're left to pick up the pieces, absolutely. And then we need to learn how to change. We the survivors, have to learn how to change the way we feel about ourselves and life. Because otherwise we're going to continue on that path. That's what I was doing 4.5, nearly 5 years ago. I was just on the same old path I had always been on. Yeah, I had some good years and I had some good times. But at night, sitting around at home in my apartment on my own couch, I was stuck with me. And I was like, okay, I haven't gone anywhere. I'm still here. The wounded part of myself is still here. And I'm still, very much wanting to self-injure, very much wanting to end my life. And how am I going to change this? You know what I mean? Because people during the day would have had no idea that I was actually suffering and going through all that because I kept it very well to myself. And so I was living two different lives. I was living the old life of abused Lori, and then I was living this life of adult Lori who can work and who does perfectly fine out in the world most of the time and makes some bad choices for herself, but still not too bad. But yeah, this is it. I was living two different lives. The abused life, from being abused as a child, and then this adult life of, Lori can work, Lori can get up in the morning, go to work, no problem. Come home from work, I'm stuck with the same old abused me. You know what I mean? So I had to learn how to change the way that I felt about myself really quickly. Because I was tired of suffering. I was really tired of it. Two of my brothers killed themselves, and I was headed that way. I knew exactly why they did what they did, what the purpose was, and my mother was suicidal, my dad was suicidal, both of them were suicidal. My parents were both mentally ill. And so my siblings were suicidal, and 2 of my siblings killed themselves. And I'm headed down the same road, like at what point, do I say no? I want to live. I want to get away from all that negative stuff. Like, I want to change this for myself. I don't have to continue living that life that my parents set up for me. How am I going to do this? So, over the last 5 years, I've done a lot of work. But I had already been looking at self-esteem stuff before. And I think these self-esteem tips from this website called Spirit Wire are pretty cool. I just took a look at it. It's sort of an advertisement for a book, but she has 21 self-esteem tips here that are really sort of different. This is from www.spiritwire.com/self-esteem-tips.html. And this person talks about just 21 tips for building self-esteem, right? Number 1, she says, set an intention. She says, before you get out of bed, decide what kind of day you want to have. Make a deliberate, conscious decision about how you want to create your day. Write it down. Play a little with how it might feel. When you get up, act accordingly. Remind yourself throughout the day of your intention. Look for ways your intention is playing out in your world. Suggested intention would be something like, she says, or whoever wrote this book, today is the best day ever. See, for most people who've been hard to say, it's like today is another horrible day of existing in this life. That would be what a lot of people would think. I know myself for many years, part of me can still say that today. See, I could easily go back and be the same old Lori that was the person who was abused and self-destructive and all this other stuff in my own life, and say, I don't know, do I really buy into that? Today is the best day ever. The other part of me says, you know what? It's so absolutely true. Because we have the choice to make this day good, or we can make it really bad. You know what I mean? We have the choice. The choice is ours, right? And that's what I was talking about on the weekend there, if anybody caught, not last weekend, but the weekend before, last Sunday before, not this last Sunday, but the Sunday before, and then the shows last week. We're all talking about that, because I'm basically at a crossroads. It's like, okay, am I really still walking wounded, or am I healed? It's a good question for myself. I've been on this healing journey for a long time, and I thought, you know what, I feel so much better than I have ever. You know what I mean? Like, I still have work to do, and I still have days that are hard. You know, my sweetheart's not well. He's still sick. I don't know. You know, it could be a hospital visit for him, right? I mean, this is the time of year he usually ends up in the hospital. He's terminally ill. You know, and it's like every year is iffy, right? It's like, well, are we going to have another Christmas together? I don't know. So I have to keep going. Something has to be positive within me to say, no, but we have to enjoy each day as they come. Because, you know, I don't want to do what my mother did, which was to sit around and sit around crying at the kitchen table going, I hate this life, I hate this world, I hate my children, and I hate my husband, and I hate myself, and I hate this, and my mother that's what she was always doing. Like, generally, if she wasn't baking cookies and talking to the neighbors, then she was sitting around the kitchen table ready to kill herself, you know what I mean? And so my mother only had two ways of being, and that was like to be happy with the neighbors because she loved her friends, right? She had a couple of neighbor friends, women who she liked, you know, and they were her good friends. And she had her family and herself. And she hated her family, she hated herself. And the only time she could be happy was when she was with these neighbors, with these people that would take her out of her life for a little while and take her so she could be somebody else, you know? Because she hated who she was, family. She hated her life with my dad. She hated her life with her children. She didn't want children. And she hated her existence because she was abused as a child. So she never sat around saying, today is the best day ever. You know what I mean? She never sat around trying to remind herself that, hey, there are some good things in this life, you know? And so I have a perfect example of what I do not want to end up like, and that's my mother. Right? And because, yeah, I mean, she died on her deathbed a walking, spiritually dead person. She was totally miserable her whole life. You know, she only had fleeting moments of happiness with friends and stuff. And that's what I was doing. I was doing the same thing. I could be happy with friends, going out to the movies, going out to dinner. That's great. But on my own, in my own time, I was doing exactly what my mother was doing. My dad is psychologically ill. I mean, he's schizophrenic, and he's mentally ill. Like, I don't even relate to this guy. I don't even care what he's doing. You know what I mean? He's so old and ancient and halfway kicking off here. And for what he does, I really don't care. You know what I mean? He's been because he is psychologically ill, he's so strange. Like, who knows what's going on in his mind. But anyway, he can't make friends, and he doesn't sit at the same table with people very long because they end up kicking him out because he's psychologically ill, right? And so he's not, you know, he just sort of sticks around by himself. But he thinks there's nothing wrong with what he did. And he thinks his life was great, and that you know, that everything should just be wonderful, and we should all forgive and forget what he did to his family. And that's his mentality: is everything is great, and he's the most wonderful person on the planet because my dad is mentally ill. Right? So yeah, because he's not, and he's a miserable person, and nobody likes him, and he doesn't have any friends. Well, my mom actually made friends. She had friends, but she was happy with them. But the minute she came home, it was all hell again. And so she spent her whole life like that. And I was doing the same thing. You know, I was going to work and I was functioning, and then I maybe go out to movies or go to dinner with my friends, and then come home and I was back in the same situation. And that's what my mother did. So I thought, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to be able to find some internal peace where I say, you know what? I'm happy with me. I'm happy with my existence in this body, in this time right now, you know? And that it doesn't matter what's going on with me. I don't care what's going on around me. There could be my whole world could be coming down around me, which most of the time it is. And I don't care. I am still going to be content to be in this body, who I am, at all times. You know what I mean? And that's a powerful thing. Let me tell you what. It really is, because it makes no difference that my whole world is crushing down around me all the time, which it really is. Because I don't care, because I have some internal peace, you know, I have some internal self-worth that says, no, you know what, at this very moment in time, what really matters is this peace in my heart, and the fact that life is so unpredictable, you know, that things are going to happen, and people's worlds are crushing down on them right now. People are dying around the world in the most horrific situations. And, you know, anything can happen anytime. This is not a safe world. You know what I mean? So I have to become secure in myself. You know, I couldn't have any secure attachments as a child, but I can learn to do this myself. And I think in order to do that, we have to start doing things like this. You know, these self-esteem things, you know, being true to ourselves, being good to us, right? So we're going to go through some more of this stuff tomorrow morning. So same time, same place tomorrow. I'll be back, and, take care of yourself. If you're having a hard time and you're thinking, man, I don't know how I can cope, I really don't know if I can go through another day, well, you make the right choice and you do something. You phone a crisis line, you do something, but you keep yourself here. You stick around. You're the only one who can make that good choice for yourself. Other people, it's completely up to us. It's not up to somebody else to help us to feel better. We need to do it. We got to stick around, and we need to get help. So whatever help it is, counseling, therapy, group support, whatever, calling a crisis line, self-help like I do, whatever it is, but you make sure you stick around. We deserve to be treated well, and we have to start with ourselves. We have to treat ourselves well, and we have to get help. You know what I mean? So if you're having a hard time, do not allow yourself to be destroyed by this. Not at all, right? Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.